There was something special about walking into an American classroom decades ago. Before the morning bell even rang, familiar sights and sounds welcomed generations of students. The smell of freshly sharpened pencils, mixed with chalk dust. Wooden desks creaked as children settled into their seats, while teachers carefully arranged papers at the front of the room. Sunlight poured through tall classroom windows, illuminating maps, globes, and handwritten lessons on a blackboard that had already seen years of eager young minds. Back then, classrooms weren't filled with glowing screens or digital displays. Learning happened face-to-face, with simple tools that encouraged patience, imagination, and curiosity. Every object had a purpose, and every school day created memories that stayed with students long after graduation. Whether you grew up in a bustling city or a quiet small town, chances are your classroom looked surprisingly similar to millions of others across America. Many of the things children used every single day have quietly disappeared, replaced by modern technology and changing teaching methods. Today, we're looking at 10 things every American classroom used to have, but don't anymore. Some may instantly take you back to your Number 10. The chalkboard that framed every lesson. Long before interactive whiteboards and digital projectors became common, every classroom centered around one familiar feature: the chalkboard. Stretching across the front wall, it was where math problems were solved, spelling words were practiced, and history lessons came to life. Teachers filled it with neat handwriting, while the soft scratch of chalk became one of the defining sounds of the American school day. Students often volunteered to solve problems at the board, carefully gripping a piece of white chalk while classmates watched from their wooden desks. Cleaning the board with oversized felt erasers filled the room with a light cloud of chalk dust, a sight nearly every baby boomer and Generation X student remembers. By the end of the day, the teacher's hands and sleeves often carried faint white marks that seemed impossible to avoid. As classrooms gradually adopted whiteboards and digital technology during the late 20th century, chalkboards slowly disappeared. Cleaner surfaces, colorful markers, and electronic displays replaced a classroom tradition that had lasted for generations. Yet for many Americans, it's still impossible to picture an old classroom without remembering the sound of chalk against a blackboard and the excitement of hearing their name called to come write on it. Number 9. Pull-down maps that turned geography into adventure. Long before digital maps and online classrooms, nearly every American classroom had a large pull-down map rolled neatly above the chalkboard. With a quick tug on its cord, the teacher could transform an ordinary lesson into a journey across the country or around the world. Colorful state borders, winding rivers, towering mountain ranges, and distant oceans invited students to imagine places they had never seen, often sparking dreams of future adventures. Many students remember the excitement of being called to the front of the room to point out a state capital, trace the route of Lewis and Clark, or locate countries discussed during history class. The heavy canvas maps often showed signs of years of use, with slightly curled edges, faded colors, and wooden rollers that creaked as they were lowered into place. Hanging nearby might have been a globe, allowing students to see how continents fit together beyond the flat pages of a textbook. As overhead projectors, digital presentations, and interactive smartboards became common in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, these classroom maps slowly disappeared. Teachers could instantly zoom into any location with a computer, making the old pull-down maps seem outdated. Yet many former students still remember the satisfying sound of a map unrolling and the feeling that every geography lesson offered a small adventure waiting just beyond the classroom walls. While maps helped students explore the wider world, another classroom companion quietly stood nearby, reminding them that the world itself could fit right in the palm of their hands. Number 8. The classroom globe. Everyone couldn't wait to spin long before students could explore the world with a few taps on a screen. Nearly every American classroom proudly displayed a large globe near the teacher's desk or beside the chalkboard. Mounted on a sturdy metal stand, it became one of the most fascinating objects in the room. Whenever there was a spare moment before class began, curious students would gently spin it, watching continents and oceans blur together before placing a finger on a random country and wondering what life might be like there. Teachers frequently used the globe to explain geography, world history, weather patterns, and famous voyages. Unlike flat maps, the globe helped children understand the true shape of the Earth and the vast distances between nations. Many students can still remember searching for their own hometown, tracing the outline of the United States, or marveling at how much of the planet was covered by deep blue oceans. Over years of use, the globe often developed faded colors, small scratches, and fingerprints left by thousands of young hands eager to explore. As computers, interactive displays, and online mapping tools became common in classrooms, the classroom globe gradually lost its place. Digital technology offered instant access to satellite images and detailed maps that seemed far more advanced. Still, nothing quite matched the simple joy of giving that globe one gentle spin and imagining the endless places it represented. For countless Americans, it wasn't just a teaching tool, it was their— Number 7. The metal lunchbox that carried more than just lunch. For generations of American school children, the school day didn't end when the morning lessons were over. One of the most anticipated moments came when the lunch bell rang, and students reached for the colorful metal lunchboxes they had carefully carried from home. Lined up neatly on classroom shelves or tucked beneath wooden desks, these sturdy lunchboxes became a small expression of every child's personality. Whether decorated with popular television heroes, cartoon characters, space themes, or Western adventures, they often became conversation starters among classmates before anyone even opened them. Inside waited simple homemade lunches, lovingly prepared that morning: peanut butter and jelly sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, homemade cookies, crisp apple slices, potato chips, and the familiar metal or plastic thermos filled with soup, milk, or chocolate drink made lunchtime feel comforting and familiar. Cafeterias buzzed with laughter as friends traded cookies, admired one another's lunchboxes, and shared stories from recess. Those colorful containers became part of everyday school memories just as much as the classrooms themselves. By the late 1980s and 1990s, lightweight insulated fabric lunch bags gradually replaced heavy metal lunchboxes. They were easier to carry, safer, and cheaper to produce, while changing trends and licensing also shifted children's preferences. Even so, many Americans can still picture the exact lunchbox they proudly carried to school, remembering not only what was inside, but the friendships, conversations, and small daily traditions that made lunchtime one of the happiest parts of the school day. After lunch, students returned to class where another familiar object waited patiently on nearly every teacher's desk, one that quietly helped keep the entire classroom organized. Number 6. The classroom pencil sharpener, mounted on the wall. Every American classroom seemed to have one familiar fixture that students depended on almost every day: the sturdy hand-cranked pencil sharpener mounted to the wall. Usually attached near the teacher's desk or beside the classroom door, it was impossible to miss. Whenever a pencil became dull, students would quietly raise a hand, ask for permission, and make the short walk across the room. For a brief moment, all eyes often followed as the familiar whirring sound filled the classroom, signaling that someone was preparing for another lesson. Turning the metal handle required just the right amount of pressure. Too little, and the pencil remained blunt. Too much, and the lid snapped, forcing students to start over again. A perfectly sharpened pencil was almost a small achievement, especially before a spelling test, a handwriting exercise, or an important exam. Teachers occasionally emptied the tiny drawer filled with fragrant cedar shavings, leaving behind the unmistakable scent that many former students still remember decades later. Even small moments like waiting your turn at the sharpener became part of the daily rhythm of school life. As mechanical pencils, disposable writing supplies, and electric sharpeners became more common, the old wall-mounted sharpener gradually disappeared from classrooms. Modern alternatives were faster and quieter, but they lacked the simple ritual that generations of students shared. Today, that gentle clicking of the crank and the fresh smell of sharpened wood remain small but unforgettable memories of a time when even preparing a pencil felt like part of the learning experience. Once every pencil was perfectly sharpened, another familiar classroom tradition helped students measure not just their handwriting, but how much they themselves had grown. Number 5. the height chart that quietly measured childhood. For many students, one of the most exciting moments during the school year had nothing to do with grades or homework. It was standing against the classroom height chart to see just how much they had grown. Often mounted on a wall near the classroom door or beside the coat hooks, these simple measuring charts became a small but memorable tradition in many American elementary schools. Children eagerly removed their shoes, stood as tall as they could, and smiled with pride when the teacher announced they were another inch taller than the year before. These measurements were more than numbers. They marked the steady passage of childhood. Teachers sometimes recorded each student's height in health records, while classmates compared their results with laughter and playful competition. Shorter children hoped for a growth spurt before the next measurement, while taller students proudly discovered they had become the biggest in the class. Parents often heard the news that afternoon as children rushed home excited to share how much they had grown since last year. As school routines changed and health screenings became less visible within the classroom, these simple height charts gradually disappeared from everyday school life. Modern schools still monitor student health, but the familiar classroom measuring chart is now rarely part of the experience. Yet for many Americans, seeing one instantly brings back memories of standing perfectly straight, lifting their chin just a little higher, and realizing that growing up happened one small inch at a time. While students watched themselves grow throughout the year, another familiar classroom companion quietly waited on nearby shelves, opening the door to stories, discoveries, and endless imagination. Number 4. The classroom reading corner, filled with storybooks. Long before tablets and digital reading apps became common in schools, many American classrooms had a quiet reading corner that invited students to slow down and let their imaginations wander. Tucked into one side of the room, it often featured a small bookshelf filled with well-loved storybooks, colorful picture books, simple chapter books, and classic children's tales. A cozy rug, a few beanbag chairs, or a handful of small wooden chairs made it feel different from the rest of the classroom. For many children, it quickly became their favorite place during free reading time. Teachers encouraged students to choose a book that caught their attention and spend a few peaceful minutes reading on their own. It wasn't unusual to see children completely absorbed in adventures, mysteries, biographies, or fairy tales, while the classroom grew surprisingly quiet. Weekly visits to the reading corner helped develop a lifelong love of books, and many students discovered their favorite authors there long before they ever visited a public library. Those worn book covers, handwritten checkout cards, and shelves filled with stories became part of countless childhood memories. As technology found its way into classrooms, dedicated reading corners gradually became less common. Digital libraries, ebooks, and online learning platforms expanded access to reading, but they also changed the atmosphere of those quiet moments. Many former students still remember the excitement of choosing a favorite book, settling into a comfortable corner, and losing themselves in a story while the rest of the world seemed to disappear. Stories helped spark young imaginations, but when it came time to create their own work, every student reached for another familiar classroom essential that has become far less common today. Number 3. The overhead projector that made every lesson feel bigger. Before classroom projectors, smartboards, and digital presentations became the norm, one machine often rolled into the room whenever the teacher wanted everyone to focus on the same lesson. The overhead projector. Sitting on a sturdy cart with its bright lamp glowing beneath a glass surface, it transformed simple, transparent sheets into large images displayed across the classroom wall or pull-down screen. For many students growing up in the 1970s, 1980s, and early 1990s, seeing the projector wheeled into the room meant something different and exciting was about to happen. Teachers carefully placed handwritten notes, math problems, science diagrams, or geography illustrations onto the projector's glass while writing additional explanations with colorful transparency markers. Students watched as words appeared almost magically in front of the entire class. Sometimes a teacher's hand or sleeve accidentally cast a shadow across the lesson, drawing a few quiet smiles from students sitting in the front rows. The gentle hum of the cooling fan and the warm glow of the projector became familiar sounds that many former students still remember today. As computers, digital projectors, and interactive smartboards became affordable during the late 1990s and 2000s, overhead projectors gradually disappeared from classrooms across America. Modern technology made lessons faster and more interactive, but it also quietly retired a machine that had helped educate millions of children for decades. For many Americans, the sight of an old overhead projector instantly brings back memories of handwritten lessons, transparent plastic sheets, and classrooms where learning often felt wonderfully simple. Technology continued to change the classroom, but one everyday classroom helper wasn't powered by electricity at all. It simply announced that another school day had reached its next important moment. Number 2. The school bell that kept every day on schedule. Long before digital chimes and automated announcements echoed through school hallways, the familiar ringing of the school bell quietly shaped the rhythm of every American student's day. From the moment children stepped off the school bus until the final bell sent them racing toward home, every lesson, lunch break, recess, and class change was marked by that unmistakable sound. It wasn't just a signal to move, it became part of the soundtrack of growing up. In many older schools, the bell could be heard throughout the entire building, echoing through long hallways lined with lockers and classroom doors. Students instantly knew whether it was time to open their textbooks, hurry to the next class, or gather their belongings at the end of the day. Teachers often paused in the middle of a sentence as the bell rang, smiling before reminding everyone where the lesson would continue tomorrow. For countless children, hearing that final afternoon bell brought a feeling of excitement that no clock could ever match, because it meant bicycles, baseball games, neighborhood adventures, or simply racing home before dinner. As schools modernized, traditional mechanical bells gradually gave way to quieter electronic tones, recorded announcements, and computerized scheduling systems. The purpose remained the same, but the familiar sound that generations instantly recognized slowly faded away. Even today, many Americans can hear an old-fashioned school bell and immediately picture polished hallways, lined-up backpacks, friendly teachers, and classmates hurrying from one lesson to the next. Every school day eventually came to an end, but before students hurried home, there was one final classroom tradition that quietly encouraged responsibility, teamwork, and pride in keeping the classroom running smoothly. Number 1. The teacher's apple and desk bell that symbolized respect. Long before emails, digital gradebooks, and classroom apps changed the relationship between teachers and students. A teacher's desk often served as the heart of the American classroom. Sitting neatly on top might be a polished brass desk bell, a tidy stack of lesson plans, a wooden ruler, and every so often, a bright red apple brought by a grateful student. While not every child arrived carrying an apple, the tradition became one of the most enduring symbols of appreciation and respect for teachers throughout much of the 20th century. Many students remember walking into the classroom each morning to find their teacher already preparing the day's lessons. The desk represented knowledge, guidance, and fairness. A gentle ring of the desk bell might signal the beginning of a spelling test, call students back from lively conversations, or quietly regain the class's attention after recess. Small gestures, placing a handwritten thank you note beside an apple, or helping organize classroom supplies, reflected the close connection many families shared with their neighborhood schools. These traditions helped create classrooms that felt like welcoming communities rather than simply places to complete assignments. As education evolved, classroom management became more structured, communication moved online, and many of these small traditions gradually faded. The apple became more of a cultural symbol than an everyday gift, and the familiar desk bell disappeared from many classrooms altogether. Yet, for countless Americans, remembering an old teacher's desk still brings back memories of kindness, encouragement, and the dedicated educators who helped shape their childhood, one lesson at a time. It's remarkable how a few ordinary classroom objects can unlock memories that have been quietly waiting for decades. A piece of chalk, the spin of a classroom globe, the sound of a hand-cranked pencil sharpener, or the ring of a school bell can instantly transport us back to a time when learning felt wonderfully simple and every school day held a new adventure. These weren't just classroom supplies, they were part of friendships, favorite teachers, first achievements, and the Small moments that helped shape who we became. Although today's classrooms look very different, the memories created inside those old school walls continue to live on in the hearts of millions of Americans. Now we'd love to hear from you. Which classroom item do you remember most? Was it the chalkboard, the lunchbox, the classroom globe, or something we didn't mention? Share your memories in the comments. We read every story, and your memory might inspire a future episode of American Scrapbook. If this video brought back a smile, please like, subscribe, and join us as we continue exploring the everyday moments that helped shape America's story. Until next time, thank you for turning another page in America's Scrapbook.